Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Mad Mamluks. My name is Sim. Along with me are my co-host Mahin Islam, the host of Sultans and Sneakers, Mort, the host of Muzzy Buzz, and our guest Hassan Shibly.
Whoa.
Sorry,
That's my brother.
Akram Shibly. Whoa!
Oh my God! Already off the bat, just messed it up.
Was that intentional?
whole life I've been trying to escape from his shadow.
So do you ever get like? I mean, so now that he did that, right? Did you always have to deal with that a lot? Like, oh my God, that's Hassan's little brother. Like they don't even know your name. Like it's Hassan Jr. Like
I remember, like, for the first time, I think it was like last year, somebody went up to my brother and was like, "Hey, you're Akram's brother," and it was like, "What? That's right, taking over."
Does that
But
suck?
usually
Though?
it's the other way around, sadly.
Does that suck? Being like associated with someone who's, because you're doing your own thing too, right? You're a producer with the Ramy Show, or sorry, a production assistant. Production assistant. Sorry,
yes.
Excuse me, production assistant with the Ramy Show. What else you got going on?
No, it doesn't suck. I don't think it sucks. If anything, it makes for a fun conversation point. I mean, but we are very different. We have very different, personalities and goals and stuff. And I like to surprise people when they're like, "Hey, you're Hassan's brother? Oh my God, you're not what we expected. Where's your beard?" So
Yeah.
Where's your topi and your thicker beads?
in here.
In your heart.
no, I remember I saw this one picture of Hassan where he's toting his gun and the guy's his kameez on.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh wow, what a he got his misbah on his wrist, and it was some picture. I'm like, oh wow, man, like they're really putting him out there to be. It was like something like this: the gun-toting American wants off the list or something like that. It was funny, and I was like, oh wow, I'm like, that kind of got my attention for a moment when I saw him.
But it
Yeah,
seems
got
like
your attention. Scared my mom.
Yeah.
Half to death.
It seems like he's picked up some of
Take
your
it down
acting
right
skills.
now.
Seems like he's picked up some of your acting skills. He like did some. I saw some of his like videos that he puts out, like what to do when you're traveling while Muslim. Seems like he learned that from you, right?
No, that wasn't me. That was all Hassan. Yeah,
Really?
Hassan's got his own little creative streak, and I think at the time it was like Peace House Productions was behind that.
Whatever
Hassan
happened
even
to Peace House Productions?
What?
Peace House Productions. Whatever happened to them? They were making this movie, and then
I never
they
heard
got
of
a whole
them.
lot of funding.
Oh.
Weren't they making a movie about Saladin or something?
Hey, wait, Sim, are we still live? Is it working? I don't see anything live.
I don't know.
It's recording though, right?
It's recording though.
Oh
so
well, if we're not live,
Okay.
it's-
If we're
All
not
right.
live, then
Yeah.
we're just gonna be.
All right, sorry.
Now, was that a gaffe, or did you intentionally call me Hassan Shibly?
Well, I thought about it. Like it's one of those subconscious things that I was thinking about it, and then right before the show, I didn't actively want to.
I think Sim. I think
So you
Sim
made-
did it on purpose.
SMH.
Everyone, it's kind of a running joke on the show that I mess up people's names.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because yesterday we were like, "Who's coming on tomorrow?" And he's like, "Akram." And then the other guys are like, "Oh, Akram Nadwi."
Akram,
Scholar out of the UK. So yeah, no. So
that's not me.
well, Akram.
So there's one thing like so here's the thing like I didn't actually get to know Akram at all like I was at RIS for the first time in my life, right? I'm walking and I think I'm talking to some Canadian cell phone guy who's trying to get me to buy a cell phone. I'm like, hey dude, I don't live in Canada, I'm from Buffalo. And I hear Akram goes, Buffalo, woo woo, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, oh, it's cool. And then I'm like, and we just talked for a second. It was like literally a second, and then it was like, oh, I'm recording, I had to go. I'm Akram Shibly. I'm Hassan Shibly's brother. And I'm like, oh, like, no, actually, I asked him if he was his brother. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I'm from the Mad Mamluks and whatever. And he's like, oh, dude, I'm like, hey, we want to be in the show. And he's like, yeah, I'd love to be in the show. I've got this going on. And so we kind of linked. And I didn't want to talk to you too much at that time because I like to save a lot of that material for the show. And when it's a new guest, we like to get to know the guest with our fans, right, with our listeners, and it makes it more organic. So if I came across cold or like not wanting to ask you any questions or not interested, it wasn't that. It was because it was because I wanted to save that content.
Not gonna lie, man, you hurt my feelings.
Oh, when
You
we
hurt my
get to know
feelings.
each other.
Nah,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, because it's always cool because I'm out in Buffalo and I literally just work and I come back home and I'm new in the community for like about a year. I've been here for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
So like when I heard Buffalo, like, oh wow, and I go around and like there's a nice community. I live on the west side of the city where right, so Mr. The Man is over here, so it's a really mixed community. But like I said, a lot of them are. I don't have a problem with it, but they're like a lot of them are like recent migrants, right? They're not
Absolutely.
really like
Masjid al-Iman is very much kind of like the center for the refugee community.
So it's very different for me coming from Chicago, because a lot of times people in Chicago are like, second generation, like they've been here established for a long time, and like this community is a little bit newer in terms of that sense. I think if I go out more to the suburbs, that's a community that's been here for a longer time.
Absolutely.
But this community, so it's a little bit different. And so when I heard, I'm like, oh my God, there's someone from Buffalo here. I hardly see Muslims in Buffalo. Like, I mean, I see them, but not like ones that are like American like me. You know what I mean? Like,
that's the cool thing about being from like a city like Buffalo is it's a small city, so that when you hear the word Buffalo, when you're not from there, it's just like instant connection. Like, we get it.
Yeah. And like it's totally opposite of Chicago. Like I've met so many people from Chicago, and it's not a big deal for me. It's like, oh, okay, cool, right? But then, and that's how I met him. Okay, so we were just walking around the RIS conference, and that was the first time I went there. It was pretty cool. We have a lot of fans. Actually, I didn't even go there to really like promote the Mad Mamluks or anything like that. I was just walking around to see what happened. I mean, because I've never been there, and so many people recognized me, like so many people, and it was crazy. I'm like, wow, I didn't know we have like people that listen that much in Canada, and it was an awesome thing. I mean, I will definitely go back, and I hope that we could do something out there later on. But so that's how we kind of bumped into each other. So I did look through some of the stuff that you did, and first of all, I'm surprised. You're like 25 years old, right?
26.
26, yeah, and 26, and I mean, you've done more than I've done when I'm 38, so you've already done more than I've done. I don't know about Mahin and Sim, but I mean,
more to our credit. Well, let's make an excuse for ourselves. We were associated with some dubious people when we were young.
Well, he's got his brother Akram Shibly.
We can't really talk about our accomplishments without the ire of the federal government. Let's just say.
Oh,
well,
boy.
look, I live.
Am I getting put back on the list?
No, I live through Amr Saeed. Amr Saeed, the holiness, he is like the embodiment of what I would want it to be, the sheikh, right? So I live. I feel like a parent that sees this child growing up, and like he's the culmination of my struggle, and like I think we achieve goodness like through Amr and his works and the community. But I get what you're saying, Sim. In a lot of ways, like we grew up in a different time. I think right now you probably grew up as a teenager in a post 9/11 world, right? I would say probably, or right. So
definitely.
You were teenagers before that 9/11 world. So Muslims there was really no scrutiny on us. Like we had our own little enclaves. We were cool, like we got along. No one really bothered us.
Yeah.
And that was it, right? But I think with you guys, you had to confront being a Muslim in America after 9/11 more than we had to. Like we were already kind of confirmed or comfortable in our identity as American Muslims before, because we grew up, I guess, before that. Where I think where your generation was kind of trying to figure out, well, what do I do? Am I an American or am I Muslim? Am I both? Like, where do I fit in here?
No, I
think that's possibly why you went down the right. Go ahead, yeah.
No. What I was just going to add was that I think we had that same sentiment as well. But I think in a post 9/11 world, like people from his generation, or at least from what I see from my daughters going into college and high school, they're so much more accepted than we were. At least, their Islamic appearances, their hijab,
Definitely, maybe now. I think we're mixing right now, like 3 quote generations. Even though I wouldn't say we're that far apart, but like, my childhood and my adolescence was definitely lit by like the post 9/11 flame. I mean, I was 9 years old when it happened. I was 9 years old, standing in the lunch line at an elementary school when someone told me I looked like Osama bin Laden. So it was definitely
what you look like an Italian kid from Brooklyn.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking like, well, you look like you're like a white almost. I mean, that's a bad thing, but I mean, like people from Sham are generally lighter. Like we're the brown ones. Like anything,
dude, it's the parroting. I mean, she probably heard like dad make a joke or something, and then she.
But she knew you were Muslim, probably, right? And that's the kind of thing.
It's like I wasn't the most subtle about it. Like I remember in elementary school in the cafeteria, I like stood up and I told everyone, I was like, listen, before you eat, you have to say Bismillah. That means in the name of God.
Oh boy.
So, I mean, I probably asked for it. Like I'm gonna totally put the blame on her. But I turned around and I look at her.
But you know what, though? 1 second. I think to a certain degree, a lot of Muslims, young people in America at the time, chose to wear Islam on their sleeve because they wanted to show that we weren't afraid to be Muslims, despite what people wanted, what they were thinking about us, right? Like we were still going to be Muslims, and it wasn't that we wanted to like say, oh, like we're happy, but more so that, hey, we're not, that's not who we are. Like, this is who we are, right? And so I think a lot of people chose to be more vocal about their Islam around that time.
What about all the Muslims that were celebrating, though?
I don't know of any that were. Do you know of anybody that was celebrating?
That's what I saw on TV, man.
I don't know of anybody.
No, he's joking about the Fox News thing about the.
Oh, wait, that wasn't real?
That wasn't real. They weren't passing out sweets.
Man, they were showing Palestinians like 2 years before, like celebrating a wedding, bro. That's what it was.
For real?
It wasn't even really that.
Dang.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it, I think.
You really would. And by the way, he was a real Republican. Like he was hardcore because he was still trying to get his paperwork. So he was a hardcore Republican in America.
I believed in the principles of conservatism, right? That like people who are on welfare are just lazy, and like pro-choice people want to kill babies, and the deconstruction of the family by the left.
Seems accurate.
Wow. Okay. I mean, look. I mean, look. Let's be honest, right? I think there are some conservative values that Muslims hold, right? And we can see eye to eye with some conservatives on that. And I think Muslims probably tend to lean more, quote, right on moral issues. But at the same time, the empathy the left has, Muslims also have as well too. So we can kind of align with them on that issue. But I understand where Mahim is coming from. But back to you though, Akram, is so how did that, I mean, I know that played a big part in how you got into filmmaking and why you chose to do that. So why don't you talk about that a little bit and tell us how that influenced your decision to get into filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, there's two elements to it. There's definitely the part that was inspired by my faith, the part that was inspired by, wanting to change the narrative for sure. But there's also the part that genuinely wanted to entertain and wants to tell stories. I mean, and I think it's important to acknowledge both because storytelling is part entertainment, but it's also part sending a message. So, I mean, my first filmmaking experience was on the internet. I was like 10, 11 years old. Before like MySpace, before Facebook, on forums, specifically Bionicle forums. Do you know Bionicle?
Bionicle.
I don't.
Nobody knows Bionicle.
Bionicle, the video game?
There was a video game. It started off as a Lego toy collection. So there are these. I could grab one, but it's like you build these Legos and they had these backstories in this world. They all came from this island. Anyways, so I started off making like these animations based on these little characters. But I also remember this very specific moment. I was with my aunt and we were watching the movie The Kingdom. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, we were watching it and we're like, okay, this is kind of messed up, isn't it? And then my aunt said something. She said, well, you can make a movie and you could portray how things really are. I was like, I couldn't I? So yeah, it's kind of like both seeds. Like I definitely always had this creative streak in me. I always like to, I remember when teachers would tell us to write a short story, I would come in with like 20 pages and like every 5 pages was a chapter. And like, everybody else had like a one sheet. So yeah, it's a little bit of both. Like I want to entertain, I want to tell stories, but there's also this part of me that sees that there's a genuine issue with not just how Muslims are represented. I think that's like a very minuscule issue. I know it's very close to our hearts, but in terms of like impacting humanity, I think it's very small. I think the real problem with media is I think it gives us a false idea of how to be happy. And I think that's a bigger problem that I hope to address is like the idea of happiness that we're kind of conditioned.
So, and speaking of that, do you think that comes more so now because of the rise of social media? How everyone's snapping pictures and in those perfect moments and they're spending all these I guess staged moments where like they're perfect, right? And everyone's looking at them and saying, oh wow, I wish I had that, or I wish I was doing that. And it's not really the reality. I mean, I can see, at least that's how I look at it. I see a lot of fake happiness on social media.
I think what it does is it brings the illusion closer to home because it used to be that you'd see these images of like this kind of false idea of happiness. You see it on the movies, you see it in television, but now you see your best friends posting their highlights from their vacations and you see, it's like it becomes a lot more closer to home. So you start to see these images and you start to feel like, well, why don't I have that? But the truth is, like you said, everybody's only posting their highlights.
Hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. So then you had a spark of interest as a child after watching Kingdom, and your aunt kind of puts this idea in your mind. So how did you actually run with that after your first animation, or you did with the
Yeah.
Legos? How did you jump from that to what you're doing now? Like, when did you decide that, hey, I'm going to actually create my studio and I'm going to go ahead and be a producer?
Yeah, totally. So, you know, I think before I had that conversation with my aunt, it was, more of like a hobby and something I did in my free time. But like my aunt really put it in a perspective where it could be a serious career choice. So, as I kind of like, went through high school, I did my senior inquiry project, which where I went to high school, that was like our final project is like, as a senior, you're supposed to ask yourself a question. And the project is like, to answer it. So my question was, could I write and direct a short film? And my answer was this really, really stupid film called Justice Man. Don't look it up. Anybody who's watching this, please don't. But yeah, so I made this film, and I was like, okay, I'm in love. I'm in love with this experience. I'm in love with this idea, and I'm gonna share this with you because this is a Muslim show. I had a sheikh, and I came to him with my dream. I was like, hey, I want to make films, and my sheikh told me, he said, that's not our business, and he shut me down completely. And
that's a good
that
shit.
had a wait, what? That's a great shit. Very inspiring, very motivating.
What's the matter with you, Akram? Check your iman, bro.
No, man. No. I basically, as soon as I heard that, I went shopping for a new sheikh. No, I took him seriously because, I think many people who are in this, I guess I would call it the murid culture, they kind of, they take their sheikh's word seriously. I took it seriously. So I actually started on a pre-med track in college. I started on a pre-med track, but I took a film elective. And I just felt that fire when I took that class. I was like, okay, this is, they're speaking my language. They're talking about representation. They're talking about the image. They're talking about signs and signifying. And like, this is what I want to do. And then like, I just looked for any excuse just to debunk my own sheikh. This is terrible. I do not advise this. But but then I heard other people's opinions. I think I remember specifically, we're talking about RIS. I remember Hamza Yusuf saying, we need more film directors. We need more storytellers. So I kind of took that as my alternate opinion, being like, okay, my sheikh, he doesn't have a monopoly on this. So yeah. I have to go with the opinion that really resonates with what I'm feeling in my heart.
I did that with music.
Really?
Yeah. I do that with drugs.
Hey, man. What drugs?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I mean that's really an interesting point because a lot of Muslims, they are, and I would say the artistic, like left brain Muslims, like they struggle a little bit, like with rectifying, hey, is this something halal or is this not? And I think there are different camps among Muslims and different schools of thought, right? Mashayikh who have different opinions, and they're confused about, whether they can actually pursue a dream or not. And a lot of times unfortunately, it's sad because I've known of some people that have kind of stepped away from religion because of that. Like they're not able to express themselves from within the frame, or they believe the framework of Islam, and that hinders their progression within Islam, and they end up pulling back, and then they start hanging out with other people who share similar interests that may not even be Muslims at all, and now they're being influenced by something completely different. Right. And it's kind of sad. So I guess in a lot of ways, alhamdulillah, you were able to find an alternative opinion that kind of justified and said, okay, well, hey, this is not entirely bad. It can be used for good, and I think that's an important lesson to take away, right? I mean, Islam is not as rigid as some people want to 100%. Make it out.
I think you guys covered it on the last recent show, right? Mort and Sim with Imran, when he was talking, like one chick, he was talking about the similar deal, and I think he went to like Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah, and he was like, music is a haram. Haram music is haram.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That thing.
I'm glad you mentioned Dr. Omar because he's also one of the scholars that told me like this is our business. This is our work. So, it's like it's all about being a critical thinker. And I think that's a lot of like even when you do have a sheikh, I mean, like I feel like you still have to have critical thought. Like the scholar who told me not to pursue film and it's not our business was also recording his talks at people were editing them and uploading them online. So there's just like you kind of read between the lines, and you see.
No, you know what this reminds me of? I'm sorry, Sam. I don't know. A lot of people may not know this, but back in the early 80s in Saudi Arabia, like satellite was like something like looked down upon. Like you couldn't have if you had a satellite dish, you had to have it like cemented in one direction. It couldn't be even towards Europe. It had to be like towards the Middle East, like because of the programs that you would get from Europe, right? So and then now you look at it today, and every single sheikh has like a digital studio, KSA 1, KSA 2. There's a Quran TV live, and like it's broadcasting around the world. And like you look at it now, and you're like, oh my god. 20 years ago, they were telling you this is haram, this is bid'ah.
Do you remember when pictures were haram?
Yeah, of course.
Now every sheikh has a twit pic.
Yeah,
a Twitter bio and a pic, and an Instagram and Snapchat, and and this I think what that's going to tell us is that the way that we communicate with people today is very different than it was 20 and 30 years ago.
100%.
And if we don't keep up with that, for example, us having a podcast as a medium, if we don't keep up with it, we're going to lose touch with our community.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the most difficult things, Akram, is like when guys like us, we are operating in spaces such as yours, but then you're also grounded in Islam, where you're talking to mashayikh and things like that. You kind of get trapped in this intersection of people who are they do what they want. They don't They have an arbitrary set of parameters that they live by. I'm not saying they're completely off the wall, and then there's also the set of Muslims that you're also associating yourself with, and you got to come back to your community with a lot of the art that you're working on, and that can be problematic in many ways because it can conflict with many different opinions related to Islam, and it could be straight up haram too. Working on a show like Ramy, there were definitely things I'm sure that you may not necessarily agree with, but you were part of it. How did you come to terms with that?
It's a great question. I mean, I think one thing we have to understand is like representation does not equal endorsement. So like if you want to talk about a conflicted character and you want to be honest about that character, you may have to explore their sex life. You may have to explore their experiences with drugs and all that. But that doesn't mean you're necessarily saying like stamp of approval, like, and I think part of it is like the weakness that we have in our in representation is because we don't have enough Muslim representation. You get one show starring a Muslim character, all of a sudden, even within our own community, we're like, oh, this is how we act, this is how we're portrayed. Astaghfirullah. Whereas like, you got the Italian community, they got Goodfellas, they got Sopranos, they got all these representations of mobsters and stuff, but they're not hurt by it because you also have positive representations of it. You see the diversity in their community. I mean, so personally, I think what it comes down to, and it's something we need to remember, is intention. What is the intent behind the show? What is the intent behind what they're doing? And like, Ramy, he's a very sincere guy. I wasn't a part of season 1 at all. Just FYI.
Okay.
I was only hired to work on season 2 so far. But yeah, he's a very sincere guy. And like, if you objectively watch the series from episode 1 to 10, and you look at the character's arc, and you look at the character, what does the character want? At the end of the day, the character wants to be a good Muslim. There's no doubt about that. He even explicitly states that I want to be good. And then what you have is a show that portrays all of the traps and the obstacles that come in his way, whether it's temptation, physical temptation, whether it's him going to Egypt in order to find himself, only to realize that the so-called Muslims in Egypt are trying to be more like Americans. You know what I mean? So like, if you're objective about the show and you kind of like look at it, it's like, wow, this is a character's journey struggling with faith. And I think that's a good thing to keep in mind is what is
yeah.
the
So
intention?
you know what I was thinking is a lot. Like there's a lot of criticism from like stricter Muslims about the show, and I think some of that comes from the fact that it's kind of like a mirror.
Yeah.
That they don't. I mean, these are problems that we have, but we may not want to talk about. But we know, all of us know, and have grown. If you've grown up in America, you've either been involved with or know someone that's in that lifestyle, or you've been in that lifestyle yourself, right? I mean, let's just be honest about that, right? Yeah. As much as we'd like to say it's wrong and we don't like fawahish and we don't want to advertise that stuff, but I think it presents in a cross section that that's we don't shine light on usually, right? We just kind of say, oh, it's accepted, right? Whatever, that Arab culture where don't talk about it, it'll go away. But in reality, there's a lot of Muslims that struggle with this growing up in a different environment. And I think that point of of him going back to Egypt and then like realizing that it's not all it's not Candyland, right? Meaning that it's not utopia. And I think a lot of us realize that because back when a lot of us were like, while we're trying to find ourselves, I wish I just want to go back home. I want to go back and or Muslims are accepted and it's comfortable and everyone just gets me. And then you go back there and they don't even view you as one of them. They just view you as this American and they want to just talk about America all the time. They want to talk
Chili's,
like
buffalo wings.
They want to have they want to eat burgers and like, batata, like fries. And, like they don't even want to talk about like, I remember I had a shock. Like I remember like I went through a phase where I was more of the Salafi inclination. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go to Saudi Arabia. I have family that I'm going to go. And I went there, right? And I get there and I'm like, oh, assalamu alaikum. I'm like, just, level 200, like, I'm like, man, I'm in Bilad al-Tawheed, I'm going to, I'm here. And I'm start asking, hey, take me to this sheikh. And like, they're like, who are these people? Like, we don't even know who they are. And I'm like, dude, they're like the kibar al-ulama. Like, what do you mean? Like, you don't know who they are? You know what I mean? Like, and it was a shock for me. Like, no, like, we don't know who they are. Like, we just want to go, we're going to smoke shisha. You want to come? And
that happened to me, man. Like, when I meet these Saudi kids at Ohio State, these international kids, I'm like, oh, mashallah, can you lead us in salah? It's like, oh, do you follow the fatwa of Sheikh Al-Fawzan? And they're like, what are you talking about? It's like, where the girls at?
And I think it happened to a lot of us, right? And I think that it presents that challenge that, hey, you know what? Maybe there's a middle ground here. Maybe like they want something from us and we want something from them. And together we can find that identity that we want. You know what I mean? In the world today, right? Because let's be frank about it. American Muslims impact the world a lot more than we think we do. Right, in a lot of ways. They look to us, whether the world wants to admit it or not. Some of the most prominent scholars in the world are American mashayikh that are born and bred in America, right? And even converts to Islam, right? And that's pretty powerful. That's a really powerful thing. And I think we sometimes struggle with that in a lot of ways,
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's all about telling an honest story and telling us and being specific. I think because we're so starved for representation, the Muslim community just so desperately wants to see, a character that's just a pious, good Muslim and prays 5 times a day and gives zakat and never curses. But like, where's the entertainment in that? And where is the story in that? Like, that may be good for you to see and to connect with, but that's what we have scholars for. That's what we have, like this whole other side of media. But when you're talking about popular culture, the truth is a compelling character is a flawed character. So the only, like, what is a story? A story is essentially a character wants something really bad and has a hard time getting it. And in order to get that thing, he needs to go through a change. So if you have a character that's already perfect from the start, you have no story. So it's really,
I mean, that's a challenge for, at least for me, when, or everyone on our team, actually, when we're trying to produce a show that separates ourselves from everyone else out there. We want to talk about things that are pretty much unfiltered in an unfiltered way, but then also have we're trying to operate in within the parameters of Islam, right? We want to make sure that the show is entertaining, that the dialogue and the there's humor and all this stuff, but then you have to worry about not crossing certain lines. And I think what a lot of a lot of the criticism that came towards Ramy was not necessarily towards the actual storyline itself. It was something more along the lines of where one of the Ramadan episode was found to be disrespectful of Ramadan itself. That the character was doing all kinds of things during a holy month that and was presented. That whole episode was kind of problematic in many sense, but and I think a lot of Muslim artists struggle with that. I think they have to put on this presentation that needs to be appealing to people. It needs to be entertained and also provide knowledge, feedback. It's contributing to the overall culture and of American society, showing to the Americans that, hey, this is how our struggles are. This is what we're dealing with on a daily basis as well. So
I see what you're saying.
I mean, definitely, yeah.
I mean, no, I could break down that episode from a story perspective. Because the thing is, if something is provocative for the sake of just being provocative, then it's a problem. Then I agree with you in the sense that, like, what is going on here? Like, you're exploiting our faith. You're making this provocative film for no reason. But actually, it has a purpose. And if you look at the story structure, the midpoint is generally where the character deconstructs. It's where the character starts to reach his lowest point. And for a character who aspires to be a good Muslim, Ramadan is the time to be a good Muslim. And that episode begins with him like, this is Ramadan. I'm not going to watch porn. I'm not going to do anything bad. I want to, and like, he even like goes to his parents and he says to his parents, he says, hey, let's go to the masjid. I want to catch, all 20 rakat of Taraweeh. And his parents are sitting there watching their sitcom. Yeah. So what does he do? He has no support from his parents. His friends doubt him. His friends are like, yeah, right. You're not going to stick to the rules this Ramadan. So he ends up slipping in the holiest month, doing one of the most unholy acts right at the midpoint of the story when the character deconstructs, which begins his arc where he has to face himself in the mirror and say, what have I done and how can I redeem myself? So strictly from a story perspective, it's actually a very, very sound deconstruction. It's taking his extreme desire to be a good Muslim and pitting it against his most extreme flaw to create this synthesis that he needs to understand how far down he's fallen in order for him to go to Egypt. So it's not like something that's just thrown in there simply for like exploitation points, simply to have shock value. It has substance in the story.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, Akram. So like, because there's like the sex scene that we're alluding to in that episode.
He's always obsessed about the sex scene for some reason.
They're like the best scenes. They're like the best scenes though. Like my favorite scene was episode 1 of the car. Anyways,
which one?
Episode 1 in the car.
Number 1. Oh, you love that part.
Yeah, that was awesome. But listen, but people always ask about like. I want to get your take on this from a filmmaker's perspective, because even we did a show about Messiah yesterday, right? And I heard one of the Messiah, they were like talking about there's unnecessary sex scenes. They were talking about these unnecessary sex scenes. Are they really unnecessary, or do you think there's a purpose to like sex scenes in these kind of like drama in these kind of films or like series? Let me ask you that.
1,000%. I think there's a purpose. I mean, I think there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if me as a filmmaker, would I have gone that far? I don't know. Maybe not. I'm not that courageous. I don't want to take that risk personally. But I do think there is a purpose to it. And I think, actually, I'm not going to say which scholar said this because I don't want to put him on the spot. But, like, I brought this question up. I was like, in telling a story, like, can we approach these subjects like sex and all that? And, like, in film, especially where you actually have to depict. And he's like, as storytellers, you have to use all the tools available to you, but don't exploit. It has to have a purpose. So would I have gone that far? I don't know. Was there a purpose?
Well, just so you know, Mahin's gonna DM you in the side for the name of that sheikh, because he's gonna definitely want to get in touch with.
I'm gonna be like, I'm happy sheik's gonna make porn halal.
privately give you that name. Actually from Chicago.
Oh wow! So here's the thing. I'm just gonna say one thing about that scene and that portrayal. For me, being someone born in America and a Muslim, and not always practicing, I think that happens to a lot of Muslims in Ramadan.
Yes,
they start off with this high, and they're like, "I'm gonna change. I'm gonna be good," and then they fall back. I mean, I don't want to say who, but I know people that on Laylatul Qadr were out at a party, like just getting smashed, and they were at Tarawih the night before. You know what I mean? But
I'm gonna put my brother on blast real quick. Hassan Shibly, I know you went to a Snoop Dogg concert in Ramadan. True.
So no, but the thing is, like, I mean, there are Muslims that they don't mean to do it; it just kind of happens, right? Like you just fall into that thing. Like I know Muslims that were like. And look, Sim knows. I don't want to go into the past.
We really did some messed up stuff during Ramadan when we were young.
Yeah, I mean, I know people that were going out to the car in the middle of Tarawih and did like hitting the blunt and coming back in. Like, I mean, it's just
before.
Trying to get closer to Allah, man.
Yeah, I mean, they were justifying or whatever. Like, hey, because they were doing other kinds of drugs and they were not doing that in Ramadan. And then we're like, yo, I need to stay like sane. So I'm just gonna, smoke a blunt and stay calm and come back in and pray Tarawih, right? And like, and for us, and honestly, it's easy to judge that. If you're like, if you want to be this perfect Muslim and be like, hey, you know what, you guys are, Ahl Bid'ah, or you guys are, munafiq or whatever, munafiqeen. But the thing is, like, for those people are actually trying to hold on to whatever they know and whatever they have. And people do that in a different way. And I think to deny that there are Muslims, and a lot of Muslims mess up during Ramadan, would be to deny the fact that, Iman goes up and down, right? 100%. That people struggle.
And he created a space for people who are going through these struggles to be able to relate and to see that they can still be a part of our community. And I think the last pin in this discussion is like, okay, was there any purpose to this? Was there substance to having these sex scenes? I mean, look at us. We're talking about it right now. We're still talking about the show. So I think that just, in a sense, that's kind of proof that what was done had a result, had an impact. It's getting people talking. It's not just talking about the show, but talking about these issues of morality and faith and everything. And I think there's some, got to give it some credit.
Yeah, and I think shows. So you mentioned one thing. You said shows like this that have perfect characters may not be relatable, and I understand where you're coming from, but I think those shows relatable. Also.
I meant entertaining.
So, yes. Okay. Right. So, well, even in that sense, I see where you're coming from. But I think there are shows that are like that, but they have their audience. They have,
Can you name one?
Like Ertugrul. I mean, like a show like that. Yeah. I mean, it's really about,
but isn't it very violent?
It is violent, but his thing is it's a noble violence. Like it's saying, I'm taking it on like crusaders that are coming in and trying to harm people, and I'm trying to spread what they call adala. But the point is that that show is geared to a specific audience, right? And people are not one dimensional. You can like that show and you can like another show, right? Like people are not, they don't have just one side of their life, right? And so there are Muslims who would aspire and be like, oh, I remember that historical golden days of Islam and how they were. And then you can kind of look at Ramy and be like, well, we're kind of like in this space today, right? Or maybe we want to get to that, but right now this is our reality.
But I got to say something about that. Well, that's a good point, first of all, very good point. But I also got to say, like, maybe it's not the best thing for us. Maybe we don't necessarily, there is a certain romanticization of the past in a sense that's very dishonest. And I think it creates a very unrealistic standard for how Muslims are supposed to behave today. Because I feel like even these leaders have dealt with things that we don't even talk about. And one thing, we briefly mentioned Salahuddin. I don't want to talk about that show production, but I had conversations with the creator and he wanted to go deeper into Salahuddin to show the struggle behind the man, not just its romantic figure, but like everybody was a youth, everybody, I think we need to be more fair to ourselves and stop romanticizing the past and start to like. I
agree 100%. I think that the more you show the humanness of people in the past, you can relate to them better and understand the struggle. Because look, and that's one of the reasons why I think Sim can comment is we chose the name Mamluk because that was a specific time in history that was very difficult for Muslims. Like it was a time where the identity of a Muslim was questioned. The very foundation of a religion was questioned. And both, it was a period of physical, ideological, and spiritual also warfare that was going on, right? We're in this position today where, yes, we're being confronted on all fronts. And I think shows like this help people who are in the middle of, like in the middle of it, in the belly of the beast.
Yeah.
Find definitely something they can relate to.
I think with historical dramas, you have a little bit more latitude with less flawed characters. Like you can have your idealistic Ertugrul or Salah ad-Din because there's already intrigue with the history. It's like you kind of want to see history unfold. And then you have the action, you have the violence. So you kind of, in a sense, you still have some vices. I mean, I don't know where we got this idea that going to war is like a noble thing. I don't think it was ever meant like, like the phrase holy war doesn't exist in Islam. It's just harb war and jihad, which is struggle, but there's no holy war. So I think in a sense, you do still need to look at flaws. And
there is qital though.
That's killing. Isn't that killing?
Qital is fighting. What he's talking about is the term harb al-muqaddas. We don't have that in Islam. That's something that was introduced later on. Like, actually even side topic, but even in the European history, they never called it a holy war until like centuries later after they were writing books about it. They never referred to it because Christian kingdoms were sometimes siding with Muslim kingdoms against other Christians. And even in Spain, some Muslim kingdoms were siding with Christian kingdoms against other Muslim kingdoms. So it wasn't really like a Christian versus Muslim thing. It was more of a land grab and a political thing, right? And later on, in order to justify and whitewash history, they called it the Holy Wars, right? A religious context. But anyways, point being is that, yes, you're right. Historically, you're able to have more playroom because people already admire characters and not inclined to fact check, the people. Whereas I think in a show like Ramy, based on real life current situation, they probably would quote fact check everything that you say about it. Are Muslims really like that? Are they really going to be like this? You couldn't get away with the kind of, if you show Ramy going on being like a gangster, shooting up, drug dealers who are poisoning the community, nobody would take kind to that, right? They'd be like, oh my God, he's a violent Muslim running around with a gun in his hand, right? It wouldn't be noble in that cause.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point.
I get that. Yeah. No, I get that part. So here, so real quickly, so now we talked a little bit about that show, and I know that was kind of I wanted to bring it up later on, but before we got to, now you're working with the show, but did you have like formal training in like filmmaking, or what is that did you pursue that as a degree, or like are you advanced studies, or how is your schooling like around filmmaking? Like if somebody wanted to get started in filmmaking, how would they go about it?
Yeah, there's no one way to skin the cat. There's guys who have literally just skipped college, skipped everything, save up money, worked, in restaurants, worked as a video, like Quentin Tarantino, he worked at a video store, and that was his film school. He would take the movies out every week. He'd watch the movies. He'd save his money from the video store. He would write scripts. So like, there's one way to skin it. But what I did is, like I said, I started off in pre-med. I took that film elective. I'm like, dang, I like this a lot. So from there, I switched my major. I went from biology to, it was called digital media production. And I'm also minored in philosophy. So I did that 4 years undergraduate studies while I was, by the way, a word on film school. Like I went to, sorry, I don't mean to throw some shade on my hometown, but University of Buffalo, not the best film program. But it's all about what you make with your time. Like the professors were still not knowledgeable, so I made sure to take some extra time out with them. I would use the equipment and make side projects. So I really started training myself to supplement kind of the okay education I was receiving. And I did internships too. So I interned at some local production houses. I worked part-time at a commercial studio. But then, like, as I was graduating college, I decided to file my LLC and start my own film production company so I can start taking on my own clients, start to have my own productions, start to, build from there. So I started True Intent Productions in 2013. My first clients were Kadir Latif, who is a Muslim rapper, and MPAC, which is another Muslim organization. So I started building my clientele for about 4 years through my company. But I ended up hitting a wall, realizing like, Oh, by the way, in that time also, I did produce some independent films as well, some independent documentaries. One called Waiting at the Door, which alhamdulillah, it won the grand jury prize at the SUNY-wide Film Festival, which is a competition across all the state universities in New York.
So that was the one about Syria, right? About the refugee? Right.
Yeah. So that film was definitely something that kind of propelled me as a creator. And it got me some bigger projects, some more exposure. But what I ended up realizing is I'm spending more time producing other people's content than I am creating my own content. So I decided to try and start writing a feature film. So I started writing a feature film script, and then I realized I have no idea how to write a script. So at around 2017, I decided to try to go back to school to learn screenwriting. So I actually applied for DePaul University in Chicago for my MFA in screenwriting. And I started there. It's a 2-year program. And I started to really study screenwriting, worked really hard on that. And also another one of my clients was RIS. So I do their video coverage every year. That's where I bumped into you. It's actually also where I met Ramy. So he was invited to RIS in 2018. I got to interview him. I shook his hand and I talked to him about, what I want to do. And like, mashallah, he's just can't say enough about his character. Really great guy. He instead of being like, okay, you're like the 100th person to talk to me about trying to get in this field, he actually was very gracious. He gave me his number and we kept in touch. And alhamdulillah, that's kind of what got me.
Yeah, I respect that, man, because there's very few people that are like that. You know. And just a shout out, one of the people that are like that are Baba Ali. If you ever bump into that guy, he is one of the most genuine dudes. I think Sim and Mahin will tell you, amazing. The guy, if he knows that you're sincere, he's like that. He'll take you on like he's known you for years and just open his doors to you, right? So it's very rare, and I that's awesome. If he's like that, that's really rare to find, especially among Muslims who are everyone claims to be a certain way, but to actually follow up on it and be a man of your word is a big thing.
He's about it. He took my number down and he's like, yeah, I'll let you know when I'm in Chicago. I never thought I'd hear from him again. All of a sudden he texts me. He's like, yo, I'm on the way to Chicago. And he really was sincere about it. And part of my film program is to do your last quarter in LA. So I did move to LA for my last quarter of school. I interned at Ismail Corp. If you're familiar with Sam Ismail, he produced directed, wrote, and produced Mr. Robot. Excellent show. So I was interning there, and I would just see Ramy every Friday at Jummah. So I was able to build more of a relationship with him then. And alhamdulillah, it's all about really, honestly, this industry. If I'm gonna give just some touchstones, there is no one way to go about it, but there is a few constants. One is you got to work really, really hard. If you're just going to film school, doing your basic assignments, if you're starting a freelance company and all you're doing is working on other people's projects and you're not taking cash, setting it aside to produce your own stuff, you're not going to go on that upward trajectory. But if you work hard, put in extra work, take out your school's equipment, make side projects, while you're freelancing, while you're working at an office, save money, do something on the weekends, put work out there. And then be confident, believe in yourself, because when the time comes and you do meet that person, you do meet that Ramy, you do meet that Baba Ali, and you got to shake their hand, you got to look them in the eyes and you got to tell them, who you are. And that takes a lot of confidence.
Yeah. And I think also one thing maybe to add, and I think you probably meant to add this, but I think you have to be passionate about your craft.
100%.
Without and I think that
goes without saying.
Right. And I think that kind of goes into confidence, right? If you're passionate, you're going to have the confidence because and I think a lot of times people do things half-heartedly. And that's one of the things that I really commend about Sim is that he pushed all of us to take this serious. I mean, I just wanted to show up and do a show, right? And be like, oh, I feel like I'm a good, but Sim's like, no, make sure you're passionate about what you're speaking about and reach out and try to, perfect your craft and the words you choose and whatever. I mean, in whatever craft you're doing, you've got to be very passionate about, and believe in yourself and that you can actually do it.
Look, when you wing it, people can tell. People when you're flying by the seat of your pants and you don't really do the research, you don't practice, you don't you're not thinking about things, when you're not letting ideas kind of just digest or come to fruition in your mind, and usually ideas will sprout forth new ideas when you let them connect with various experiences that you've had. That in itself comes out on episodes. Even if it's not relating to a topic, you can make all kinds of different connections. And that's what I always tell people, that always, think about things, whether you're listening to our show or not, or any other podcast or YouTube or whatever. We're getting information so fast that we're just, clicking, moving on to the next video. And these, when I see things like TikTok and Snapchat, it really bothers me, because it's feeding into this mindset of just rolling through people's videos and not letting any ideas. It's almost exploiting your attention. I mean, obviously it is exploiting your attention, but it's not. It's doing something much more dangerous than that.
What it's doing is teaching people that there's no more critical thinking required. You just kind of take what's given to you, absorb it, and then move on. Like, just believe it, right? Like, a lot of times.
I gotta disagree. I gotta disagree a little bit. I just got TikTok 2 days ago. I'm not gonna lie.
No.
Shame on you Chinese agent.
I'm having a blast. I'm having the time of my life. And like what it does is like, yes, there is, in a sense, there is this issue with attention across the board, and I do agree with you there, and it's something we need to be conscious of. But also, what these micro platforms do is they give people a platform. Like, it's almost like democratizing entertainment. It's like, you can become famous if you are willing to create these stupid 15-second videos and keep at it and do something that'll eventually spark. But I actually wanted to comment on another thing you said, because you mentioned experience, and I'm actually really, really glad you said that. Having experience is also a very important formula to becoming a successful storyteller. A lot of people think it's just all about, putting in the work and writing and reading and writing and watching movies and creating, but you need to experience things. And I did gloss over my career history, but I also want to mention, like, throughout this time, I also made sure to be very active, and like, I was 100% not just working on my films, but working in the community. Like, when Obama brought in the 10,000 Syrian refugees, we had over 200 come to Buffalo. So I made sure that I spent time with them, and I got to know them, and we hosted dinner for them, and me and a group of people. So I'm not taking all the credit. It did require a village, but we would go out, we would see what they need. We would try to get donated couches, donated furniture, bring them to their houses, have FaceTime, and just, you need to experience life in order to be a good storyteller. Your life cannot simply be about movies, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a core, right? You need to find out where it's coming from. You can't just invent these stories. I think the more authentic and more organic these stories are, the ones that you hear, then you're able to kind of put together a picture for other people. Because the world is more than just one person, right? It's just 100%. It's collective experiences together that make a good story, I believe. But and speaking back about TikTok and things like this, now I get it. You're saying it gives people a platform, right? And that part I understand completely. The same thing we're doing with YouTube, right? It gives us there's no way in hell we would ever be able to be known if it wasn't for YouTube or the modern era. I get that, but I think the concern that Sim has is that in this climate of the manipulation of opinions by putting alternative facts out there, and just things that may not necessarily be true, but you keep repeating it, like kind of what Donald Trump did. The psyops, right? You just throw out fake news and you just keep throwing it out there and keep throwing out propaganda, and you watch it more and more. You watch it and you keep watching it, and now if you get little blips of it everywhere you go, you tend to subconsciously accept it and say, okay, yeah, it's happening, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's the problem that we're having. Before, when you read a book, you actually had to, read it, think about it, understand. There's a certain reflection period in a way. You can't just get a snippet, and there's no osmosis with the book. You just don't put your hand on it and absorb it, right? You actually had to you had to just figure it out. You know what I mean? And I think that element is gone. But I see you're positive in the sense that, people like us get an opportunity. Right. And I think that's also, in a lot of ways, and I wanted to talk about that, was that's kind of why I believe shows like Ramy and things like that need to come out, because if not, they're going to come out on YouTube. Like, I mean, they're just going to be, people who are talking about this stuff openly on YouTube and blogging and vlogging about their lives, as they already do. I mean, you can go through numerous channels of, Muslim channels or even non-Muslims, and people just talking about their lives, and people are genuinely interested because they relate to it. It's relatable to them, right? And that's, I think, the biggest thing now is that Hollywood and social media, all of this is moving to content that is relatable to human beings, not telling human beings what to think. Now I think production is revolving around what people are actually giving them as feedback, right? I think it's kind of reversing a little bit.
Totally.
Akram, how do you use TikTok? Let me ask you this, because I have a TikTok account as well, right? I just don't know how to use it yet. Right?
Oh, for the love, brother.
It's because of the way. This is why I'm looking at it. So, you familiar with Gary Vee?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Gary Vee's all in on TikTok. Like, he thinks TikTok is the thing to be in right now, right? But I think that TikTok is a tool to reach certain markets. YouTube's a tool for certain markets. Audio podcasting is a tool for certain markets, right? So for my channel, right, the challenge I'm having is the high production video stuff. I've got all those recordings, but I don't have like the hardware to process it or edit it right now. I've got this audio stuff. So I got people hitting me up, be like, hey, when you coming on YouTube? I'm like, I'm not there yet. If you want to listen to me, go to my podcast app. But TikTok or maybe IG story or like Snapchat, it's stuff you can just still run off your phone. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you'll get a market there. So the YouTube market is, I'm not ready for my YouTube market yet. But how would I do, if you have a podcast or anything, what's TikTok? That's one thing I don't understand. It seems like a bunch of kids doing goofy stuff. How does a 38-year-old dude, like adult, like use it?
Well, you got to be goofy first and foremost.
Okay.
Well, he's got that down check.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead.
So just be yourself. I mean, honestly, TikTok is, I think, where you strip away the high glossy production stuff. Okay. Like there's TikToks, Kevin Hart is just running around going, I'm on a TikTok, and it's in like a million hits. So
I love Kevin Hart, by the way. I saw his special and I saw his biographical, the series he had about him, right? And I thought it changed my perception about Kevin Hart. He's completely like, I mean, he's about it.
I want to finish this. I don't want to talk about Kevin Hart. Finish your point so I can like literally learn something here. Keep going.
So if you're trying to be all glossy, like high production value on TikTok, I think you're not using the medium. I mean, TikTok is a great place to just strip away all of the artifice of like our personalities. Like this, you got the good lighting, you got the good setup, you got the nice camera, but like, who are you when all of that turns off? And another great thing about TikTok is you can use other people's audio on your video, so you can start to quote different creators in a sense, and you become a part of this conversation and this culture. It's like social video making. So it's really exciting to me.
So the way I see TikTok is like, it's a goofy way to take other people's clips and put your face on it and like do things and like kind of merge it all together and produce this funny little little clip that people can spread around. It's not really meant to be like, oh, I'm going to come to TikTok to get like some kind of, a serious conversation about something, right? Yeah. It's just more of like, I'm gonna get a quick laugh off of it.
Exactly. TikTok is great for people who are doing something funny that's like short and they want to get a quick laugh. It's also great for creators. Like, here's one thing. Like, if you want to keep your TikTok more serious, you could show your 60-second podcast setup. Got this mic, boom. Got this cable, boom. Plug it in here, boom. We live. So in a sense, in 60 seconds, you've shown people what it takes to set up your podcast. So there's a lot of maker content on TikTok of people like, doing arts and crafts and stuff. So it's not just purely goofiness, I guess. Yeah,
like 10-second crafts or something like that, whatever. I've seen that kind of things, right? Yeah. So I think, Mahin, for what you're trying to do as far as like use it as a replacement for video format, I don't think TikTok is a solution for that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not going to help you. It might be good for a promo of an episode or how you're going. Like, people probably show them driving somewhere, setting up a studio, a quick face of interviewing the person, and then like the ending of it. And that would be like a promo for like the show, right? But it wouldn't actually be like a full-time video thing for you.
I got you. Yeah. So like maybe a video of me trying to wrap a lungi or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just you rant. Like, I feel like you'd be you seem like the kind of guy that could just rant. You should do TikTok rants.
Probably more more on sports. I like politics stuff. Like Mort is the bigger ranter.
Yeah, I'm a political junkie when it comes to like politics. I rant on politics.
No, but like, you seem like the kind of guy that would rant about the fact that like the bread tie won't come off the loaf of bread.
Maybe, like Larry David.
Like, oh, what is this?
Well, yeah, why did they make it like this? Yeah. Actually, I was at Bangladesh. I was ranting about how I hate the bathrooms there.
Oh my God, that's a hit TikTok. That's a hit right there.
Yeah, you should talk about how they brought a fresh toilet to you and like how they had to like turn on the water. And I mean, that kind of stuff people want to hear, right? Like that kind of funny little awkward moment in life stuff, like the Larry David stuff, right? Like how, like stuff like that. They love that on TikTok.
All right, man. I got a takeaway.
Take away, my friend. Take away.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome, sir.
Just tag me.
As usual, takes all the credit.
I'm not as dumb as I look, all right? So,
but the big problem here is that Mahin's phone's infected by the feds. What do we do about that?
I mean, like,
I don't think the listeners know about this. So,
okay.
So what happened was Mahin was on his way from Bangladesh, and
so like I'm on my way back from Bangladesh, and the day before I leave, a couple days, I basically binge on all your brother's videos on what to do on Muslim offline. Yeah, and you basically like going through that. There's this case that happened, like federal court ruling in November, and I'm like, yo, I'm good. I'm a U.S. citizen now, so I'm like, all right, man. If they want me to unlock my phone, I'm gonna be like, nope. If it happens, right? That's the whole deal. So I'm like kind of doing the background. So anyway, we're coming back. I told my mom too. I'm like, hey, if they ask for your phone, they ask you to unlock it, like, don't unlock it. And she's like, but I don't have anything on my phone. I'm like, I don't care. Right? Because my mom is like technically illiterate. She has no apps or nothing, So, and we're getting off the plane at O'Hare. Everyone's walking out your passports, and it's like they always send like the minority CBP officers after you. So I got this Thai dude who pulls me aside. He's like, "Sir, can you come with me?" And then, it's back the back passport control, and
you're completely random.
That's what they say. I think they were looking for me.
Okay.
It's probably Mort's fault.
It's our anti-Saudi episode.
How's it my fault? How is it my fault?
I don't know, man.
No.
You're the one. I mean, man, I don't know.
Your name is Mort. Is that your real name?
No, Murtada. It's my name.
Oh, okay. Say Mort is like French for death, so there might be some sort of.
No. So like, anyways, I get pulled off. The dudes, they're like, oh, just be a few minutes. They'll be all nice. Here's your bottle of water. You got to use the restroom. They pull me up. But my mom, your mom, she can sit down. They don't care about her. And it's funny because she's the one who had the Quad S coming from Dubai, but like nothing. Their search in Dubai was like a joke. They didn't ramp up their Quad S game, by the way. Anyways, so they come up, pull me up, like, where you been? Standard. I made a stop in Dubai because I did a podcast there, 8-hour layover, and then 2 weeks in Bangladesh. And they're like, oh, can you see your phone? Like, show it to them. Is it in airplane mode? I'm like, no. You put it in airplane mode for you. Can you unlock it? And I'm like, nope. And then they were like, huh? And they're like, well, we can seize the phone, right? And then I was like, yeah, I'm going to exercise my Fourth Amendment right to privacy. And they were like, okay, we can seize the phone still. I'm like, yeah, if you guys want to seize the phone, you can seize the phone. I'm not unlocking the phone. And then I was like, well, I heard there was a ruling in November, federal court basically saying that, you guys can't do this and it's unconstitutional. And the guy was like, there was a Mexican guy and his buddy. He was like, well, if it was unconstitutional, we wouldn't be doing it. And I wanted to kind of say, like, I don't think following the Constitution, you guys care about that. I was in my head. I didn't say it.
You had the guts to say it.
No, but like, I was just like, because, they were still being respectful, right? And I was like, but I was just being like, I was just not in the mood. Like, the thing is, also at the time, my kid was in the ER. Like, I landed, my wife texted me. She's like, I got to take her to the hospital. She might have appendicitis. So I'm kind of like annoyed. I'm like, my kid's I'm not in a good mood. And I'm like, and I was kind of ready for like a battle too. Like, I had prepped for it. So Hassan's videos got me all like riled up. I was like, man, I'm ready to do this. So I was like, you guys can take the... And then the guy was telling me, like, listen, the federal court ruling, it doesn't apply in all districts, et cetera, et cetera. At that point, I'm thinking, like, these guys are just lying to me. And I'm like, listen, I know you guys, even if I unlock my phone, you guys can still seize my phone, right? And the guy didn't say nothing. And then I was like, listen, you can tell me whatever you want. I'm not unlocking my phone. If you guys want to keep my phone, you can keep it. Just give me a receipt. You know what I mean?
Dang.
And then they were like, all right, well...
Why didn't you at least do a factory reset or something?
Not in front of them. I've heard of some people that do it right in front of them. They like take the phone and like swipe. I didn't think about it, to be honest.
I would have just swiped my phone clean. But good luck, bitches. I mean, whatever.
But that's what I'll probably do that next time because I'm flying again in February to go to Morocco and Spain.
No, next time do you know what you do now? What I usually do, I just take a dummy phone with me. I just take a stupid old iPhone that I have. Yep. I just put my SIM in there and just leave my other one at home. I just don't put nothing on there.
I have a burner Android. The camera sucks though, right? And I'm like,
who cares? You're going overseas, bro.
Nah, man.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Anyways,
that's exactly why you need a good camera.
Yeah.
No, because
really? I don't know. Well, I mean, I figured you got your SLR with you. Why would you want to use your phone? I mean, I don't know.
I have a Lumix, Panasonic Lumix, but anyway, so they sent me back down. They bring me back up, and they're like, "You sure you want to do this?" Like, I'm like, "It's more work for us, and all this paperwork, and who knows, the inconvenience." And I'm like, "Yeah, I understand. Just keep my phone. Give me my receipt."
Isn't that funny? Like, they want to inconvenience me, but now I want to inconvenience you back, and like, "Oh, you sure you want to do this?" Yeah, I do want to do it. I mean, if you want to inconvenience me, I'm going to inconvenience you.
Right. So, anyways, that was it. So I basically got back. I went on the computer. Talked to like some of my friends have gotten a similar situation. Some of them have been like stuck for like 5 hours. I wasn't really delayed that much, to be honest, because if you think about it, it takes forever for your bags to hit the baggage claim, and then I probably had another half an hour on top of that. And the guys were like, he was like, "All right, you can go," right? And they kept my phone. So a couple of days I didn't have my phone, and then they mailed it back to me. I think they sent it out. So this happened on a Tuesday, the 31st, New Year's Eve. I don't know if these guys work on New Year's Day, and then they sent it back out on Thursday, the 2nd.
Akram,
they probably just took a flash of your phone, whatever's on there, and they sent it out. Yeah.
Akram, did Shibly ever tell you what they're actually looking for? Are they going through your contacts or anything?
To be honest, I don't really know, and like that's actually part of what's so scary about what they're doing is we really don't know what they do with your phones when they take I mean, like Mort just said, it is implied that there's a possibility that they do flash your phone, that they download the data and they store it for them to browse through. And,
because they can hack it. They don't need your 4-digit code or whatever.
But isn't there a way to like check your on Apple has a security thing where you can see all the activity?
I don't know. I'm not an Apple tech, but all I can say
there's no. I mean, they have technology. Listen, if they want to get your stuff, there's a way they can do it without you knowing. Well, if you give them possession of your phone, what they do with it when they have possession of it, and the technology they have, you won't know about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Just the bottom line.
For me, when it happened to me, this is before there was the court ruling, obviously, that they said that they can't search your phone without probable cause. It's very early on in this whole cell phone search situation. It was early 2017, and they actually gave me a worksheet where they asked for my password. Basically, I was supposed to fill it out, like write it down, and I refused to do that. I refused to write down my password. I refused to write down my social media handle, but I did unlock my phone because, like I said, it was early on. The ruling wasn't clear. I didn't know what they were going to do to me if I didn't comply, and my agent basically coerced me using language to the effect of, if you don't unlock your phone, we're going to assume something criminal. So I did it. I unlocked my phone, and I know she took it behind her into a closed room for several hours, and I didn't get it back until I think it was about 2 hours, an hour and a half to 2 hours. They were looking through my phone. Then they just let me go. So, I mean, are they looking at messages? Are they looking at photos? Are they looking at contacts? God knows what they're doing, but the fact that they're looking through is a problem.
Shibly must have been disappointed in you.
Yeah, he was very disappointed in me. He's like, I think he even went live right after. He's like, so, I'm here with my idiot brother who locked his stupid phone. Don't be like him, guys.
Yeah, what's funny is that I was looking up through some of the stuff that, when you sent out the bio, and I kind of just wanted to do a little poking like I do about guests before I got on, and I saw the clip of you at the Channel 4 News, where they were interviewing you and your fiance at the time. I don't know if you're married now or not, but yeah, and so it's funny because I believe the second time they actually got physical with you, right? Like they physically took your phone out from your pocket.
Yeah, so the second time, it sucked because it was like literally within a week of the first time. And I was like, I'm gonna take my fiance out to Paramount. I heard they got some great shawarma.
Oh yeah, and Niagara Falls.
Oh yeah. No, actually, I went to the one in Mississauga.
Oh, okay, all right.
At the time, the Niagara Falls one wasn't open.
Yeah, it's great food.
Oh my god, yeah. So we go there. We have our shawarma. We take our picture. It's great. Interestingly, this is an interesting detail that did not make the news. So we went to Paramount, and then we stopped to see a talk with Dr. Omar. So I was in my thobe and my kufi, playing the part, dressed all super Muslim. And when we're driving back, I stop. I'm like, honey, I'm not trying to get into any trouble. So I took off my thobe. I took off my kufi. I threw on my button up. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm all white passing now. I should be fine. But I wasn't. They pulled me in. And they're like, we need you to come in again. So I texted my brother. I'm like, hey, they pulled me in again. And just long story short, I think my brother called the Border Patrol office. It was like, release Mohammed Shibly immediately, which actually...
Release him now. This is care speaking to you.
We'll use our full might against you if you do not comply. I think that ended up backfiring because that's when they just decided to take my phone. They're like, okay, how is his brother, aka lawyer, aka whoever calling us right now, how does he even know where he's at? So they demanded my phone, and I said no.
Wait. So your brother got you into more trouble?
Maybe.
I'm just kidding.
Honestly, it's very possible. Yeah, but he had a good intention. He was basically telling him like, hey, look, I think he said something to the effect of like we're watching you, be careful with what you do. And obviously they did not. So they asked for my phone and I said no. And I said, I was in here a few days ago. You guys took my phone. I'm not handing it over again. And that's when 3 officers jumped on me. One of them grabbed me by the throat. I felt like I was being choked. Another one pinned my legs down to the ground. And then the third reached into my pocket and he took out my phone. This time they only took my phone for about 15 minutes. I think one of their supervisors ended up telling them, hey, yo, chill out. What are you guys doing? This is not the kind of mess we want. And this is something to say, I'm very fortunate, not just me, but I think alhamdulillah, my brother is who he is because he was able to get the attention that it deserved afterwards. Because before this happened to me, it was happening to thousands of people.
I saw the CBS article where they listed 15 to 20 other people this has happened to. One being a NASA engineer and just top-notch people that were victims of this. And actually, I know of somebody even prior to 2015, 14 that had his phone seized at the border. And he even unlocked it. They just took his phone and he got it back a month later. I think it must have been very primitive at that time when they were doing it. But yeah, and he was actually a Bosnian brother, and he looks just totally you would think totally American. I think he's even got an American name almost, but very strange. But anyways, I've only had one weird moment at the border, and that was kind of when I was coming in. They did a random customs check, whatever, and then they were it was really quick, about 20 minutes, but they just checked it, whatever, my luggage, and that was it. And then but the guy was like, oh, so you went to Pakistan in January, right? I'm like, yeah. Oh, okay. How is it there? I'm like, I don't know. It was my first time going. I've never been there before. I went there. It was all right. I was there for 10 minutes. Okay. And then he just kind of okay, well, have a good day. I'm like, all right, cool. And then that was it. But really, for the most part, I haven't really had too much trouble. Since 2013-ish. I guess it depends on what they're looking for. And I think that's part of the problem, right? Where you don't know what exactly has gotten you on the list or what you can address. And I think that's something that your brother is addressing with in a lawsuit where, you should have the right to know what exactly is the issue of contention, right? 100%. That is, and I think honestly that would help Muslims in terms of being more transparent with the government about certain issues. If it's just about, hey, where I got my money from, hey, I'll submit tax documents. There you go, look at them. No problem, whatever, right? But the whole the anonymity aspect of it, the whole idea of not knowing what you're looking at and just total blindsiding us is the weird part, right? I think that's 100%. What a lot of people are are confused about. So, but yeah, just side note, that recording or that news broadcast of where you guys are walking on, that's literally like a minute from my house. Like I run over there actually by that bridge over there, run back.
We picked that spot on purpose because it's like overlooking Canada. So it's like, but you know, I got an interesting analogy for you. So like, you know how Muslims, like we kind of have all these arguments and these struggles with like, you know, the evolving technologies. It's like, okay, if you're on a plane and Maghrib comes in, you know, which way do you face? You know, and like we're trying to figure out like
you sit backwards on the seat. You never done that?
Pray on the seat?
Yeah.
Or backwards.
Put your knees on.
Yeah, but like what if you're praying towards like the Sydney Opera House? You know what I mean? It's like, do you actually have to physically get up and face northeast? You know, so like we have these tricky fatwa questions, like how do we evolve to the times? That's what's happening with the Constitution and technology. There was never a time where people would literally cross a border with a file cabinet full of all of their personal information, all of their family photos, all of their documents. And that's essentially what we're traveling with when we travel with our phones. So the Constitution is not compatible with our modern technology in a sense. So it needs to be updated. So we're in this tricky area where like constitutional law, it's like I have no authority to talk about any of this, but essentially it's like the same thing. Just like in Islam, we kind of struggle to like figure out certain rulings and how that applies to modern technology.
Yeah.
Constitution and modern technology, we're at this kind of intersection right now where we need to figure out how the laws of the Constitution line up with our current technological advances.
Right. And I think for most people who don't know, the Fourth Amendment guarantees your right to have privacy, right? That you can't just be, the government can't just look at everything you have and own. Yeah. The problem comes about is where the law that goes back 150 years, that if you're entering the country, everything is subject to search. And they meant like, meaning at that time, I believe the framers meant that, you know, whatever you're bringing in as far as customs and like, you know, like physical luggage and things like that, right? Like inspecting the vehicle, like make sure no one else is there, things like that. Not so much that, hey, we're going to look into a device that has every piece of information about you and everything about your life on it, right? That's not what they intended to, or at least from what I can tell, what they thought was going to happen, right? Because that would be a gross violation of your privacy, right? I mean, to know your medical history. I mean, we have HIPAA laws. We have, so many kinds of laws that are violated that would be violated. I mean, if a person like that were to look at it and to store it, right? Because now the question comes on, well, what are they doing with that information? Who's looking at it? What are they doing with it, right? Like and then how long do they keep it? What is the life cycle of it, right? All that stuff is, a question that we don't have answers for. And I think that's what the whole litigation is about and what the challenge is about now.
Yeah.
As far as you know, the ruling happened in November. Do we have any idea when the law actually, when it actually is enforced? Like, that's what seems to be the other question mark here. Because I thought because the ruling happened in November, that was automatic. That's the verbiage I got from all the articles I read, right?
So, now, I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not sure, honestly, the law might not even apply to everybody. The ruling may only apply to the people on the case. That's the tricky part that I think, our attorneys at the ACLU and EFF are trying to figure out. And I don't think I can speak too much more on the specificity of how the law applies just because it's an ongoing case. But I will say right now, the judge's decision is supposed to be a decision. It's supposed to be like effective immediately.
Right. So I think the thing that people need to realize, if it does stand for the people involved, other people can use this case as a precedence for their own case. If they get stopped or if they have to go through this thing, they can say, well, this judge viewed that this is unconstitutional. So by virtue of that, I want this to be also deemed as unconstitutional.
Definitely. And I mean, anybody, this is like all public domain. Like anybody can look this up. It's the case is El Assad versus Nielsen. You can look up the ruling. You can read the ruling, and you can definitely use that, to your advantage to protect yourself. But as far as the actual legal scope of it, I'm not sure. But one would, like you said, think that because the judge made this ruling, that it should be immediate and universal.
Right. Cool. I mean, well, I bet you a lot of people didn't know that about about you. So that was pretty cool. And like, I mean, that you share that information is kind of personal for some people. And so I appreciate you doing that. A lot of people don't want to, mention that kind of stuff.
What's
you
next?
Gotta be tough, you know?
Yeah. When's season 2 coming out?
Ramy?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just a production assistant. I get the coffee. I stand outside, make sure nobody steals the equipment when we're filming the Bronx, you know. But I would assume probably around the same time as season 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do have a.
So you probably sorry, real quick. So this is probably a really good experience for you to make connections. I mean, with like Netflix. I mean, I'm sorry, Hulu and like production, other. Like I guess I wouldn't say is it Hollywood or I don't know if that would make sense, but I mean at least in that circle, like it helps you. I'm sure it's beneficial for your career to be part of that production team, right?
Yeah, I think that's another great thing that creators can keep in mind. It's like it's not always about leading your own production. To be a great storyteller doesn't mean that you're always in charge all the time. You should go out there. You should be a PA. You should feel the atmosphere of a film set, meet people, shake hands, and like just another testament to how incredible of a show Ramy is. Like everybody who's on the crew is really behind this show, and there's only about like a handful of Muslims. So it just speaks to the environment he's created by creating something so meaningful. The fact that the atmosphere of the set is so friendly and lovable. So for me as a storyteller, inshallah, like when I direct, I want to make sure that my productions have that same environment and atmosphere that Ramy is able to create. And like, had I not taken this gig where I am just a production assistant, where I am getting the coffees and getting the lunches and standing outside under the rain, I don't think I'd have that, understand how to create that kind of atmosphere and environment in my own productions moving forward. So definitely try to like juggle both. Like you want to direct, you want to write, you want to make sure you're leading in some capacity, but be humble enough to be able to work for others and learn from others too.
Yeah. Well, now within your own company, True Intent Productions, how are you bringing, or are you able to pull any of these experiences into what you're already doing in terms of
1,000%.
Yeah.
So there's like, I can't even begin to describe how much I'm learning. Now, I'm actually rebranding True Intent moving into 2020. True Intent, my goal with it is to create enlightening entertainment. But like I said, for the past 7 years, it's kind of fallen more into services. And I am grateful. Like I've been able to create amazing content for CARE, for MPAC, for ICNA, for organizations that are doing something meaningful. But now that I've seen this production, I want to take what I've learned and use it to make sure True Intent is helming a proper narrative film. So moving forward into 2020, I'm hoping that like with the experiences I made and with the people I met and with the stories I've learned to write through going back to school, getting my master's in screenwriting, kind of synthesize all of this to start to take on like a serious feature film production.
So let's just say the Mamluks contracted you out. What would you do with a True Intent Productions? Let's just say we wanted some kind of
how would you make me look cool?
Well, last year I would have probably worked with you to do whatever you want. I would help you direct and produce like a production to your liking. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not interested in being the company contracted by the Mad Mamluks. Yeah. However, if the Mad Mamluks wants to get in on a narrative production and you want to kind of help produce something that is entertaining and story driven, help us build a crew and get some actors involved and like create something original, I'd be in for that. Like Mad Mamluks, True Intent collab on that all day. Sure.
Like almost like making.
I think,
but I won't make your promo videos if that's what you're asking me.
Yeah. Come on, no. But no, I think the thing is though, I think with the advent of Ramy, I think a lot of Muslims are thinking back and like, wait, dude, my story in America is 10 times cooler than that story, dude. You know what I mean? Like, the stuff that I went through. I think a lot of people, but I think a trap that we're gonna fall into. Like, I don't want Muslims to think that your content always has to be like what Ramy is, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I think Muslims need to get away from the identity narrative. I think Ramy's doing a great job at it and it's really funny and it's really awesome and he's killing it. But the identity narrative, the fact that all of our stories have to deal with finding our identity, I think we can move on from that and start to get more into genre storytelling. Where's our heist movie with a Muslim robber? Where's our like Muslim murder mystery? Where's our Muslim, like chase movies, fantasy movies? There's so much content in Islam that could build a fantasy world. Imagine a fantasy story where a person needs to like go inside their own mind to battle their nafs. You know what I mean? Like I think we need to move into the genre space to start having like thrillers, comedies, action adventures, romances. Like that's where we got to start.
Or how about like how about a futuristic Islamic state, like a caliphate, a futuristic one that's like encompassing the entire world?
Why not?
Wouldn't that be kind of cool?
No, like, Battlestar Galactica would be like, I don't know, Battlestar Khilafaka. I don't know. You can call it. It would be like Khilafah out of space somewhere. You know what I mean? But
you got the ship teleporting into your spaceship, telling you how to wash your toes properly.
I mean, stuff like that. I mean, but I think so. Let me ask you this though. So, what is? I think someone listening to this would be like, well, and someone who spent time in the Middle East and whatever. The thing is, how do you say what you want to do now as far as that is different than what the content they produce is like in the Middle East? Like, for example, like the shows and the movies they produce, because a lot of that stuff is around, they're Muslim people, but they have like, murder and mysteries and drama and all that kind of stuff in their own content. So what's different about what you want to do in America versus what they're already doing in the Middle East as far as the content they're creating that involve Muslims?
That's a great question, honestly. I have to think about it a little bit because I'm not that steeped into, unfortunately, into Middle Eastern content. Although I have been watching, the cinemas like Nadine Lebaki's Capernaum, for example. Have you seen that film?
No.
I didn't see it, but it's in my queue.
Riveting, tearjerker. Oh my God! But like, I think the Middle East has the advantage in the sense that we're not like hyphenated identity in the Middle East. Like you're a Syrian, you're a Syrian, you're an Arab, you're Pakistani, you're Pakistani, even though I don't know Pakistan technically in the Middle East, not sure. But basically like they're already doing this genre stuff because they don't have to overcome this hurdle of like, what is my identity? You know what I mean? So what I want to do is I want to tell stories that are kind of like more genre related, but have Muslim characters. Like the feature that I most recently wrote, which, Allahu Alam, it might be my first feature film. It's getting some promising reviews from people who read it. It's about a young Muslim Yemeni kid who wants to be the toughest wrestler in school.
Ooh, yeah, man. Yeah. That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, man.
It's all about him.
The Yemeni kid from Lackawanna, is that what it is?
Yep, exactly. These kids, honestly, I used to be super scared when the Lackawanna kids would come to the high mosque. They used to always pick on me. I don't know what it was. I don't know what's in the water in Lackawanna, but for some reason they're just bigger, they're stronger.
So for people who don't know, Lackawanna is a community out here in Buffalo where all the Yemenis live. Like it's Yemen town. Yeah. So if you want to meet a Yemeni, you go to Lackawanna. It took me a while to figure that out. When I went there, I got Mendy from there and Hanid. Because I came here, I'm like, oh, everyone's coming. There's so many Yemenis in Buffalo. I'm like, I haven't seen nobody on the west side. I saw a few in the masjid here, but then I went to Lackawanna. I'm like, oh, now I get it.
And another reason why I picked Yemen, I picked a Yemeni kid, is like with the Lackawanna community, you have third generation Muslims. You have people whose grandparents came to the country and whose children were born here and who's had children. So like, I think for me is like, great, I could step away from this whole first generation nonsense. I could get right into a story about a kid who's just dealing with masculinity and dealing with like, how can I be the toughest wrestler while my little sister is home alone and I'm out here trying to prove to everyone that I'm a tough guy.
Just please tell me you're not going to cast Adam Saleh. Just please, just tell me you're not going to cast him for the show.
I think he might be a little old for high school.
No, nothing against the guy. I just feel like there's so many other up and coming people that you could probably pick. I hope you pick someone from that community as well too. Like that'd be great.
What I'm thinking of doing is like starting to check out like the drama clubs in Lackawanna and just see like, what the talent is there. But like, you see what I'm getting at? It's like, yes, okay, I'll be honest. There is a little bit of identity conflict in my story, but it's not about a Muslim kid trying to figure out what it means to be Muslim. It's about
he's already American pretty much. He's already there. That's all he knows. He doesn't know anything else besides being an American.
Exactly. Right. He's trying to figure out what it means to be a tough guy, what it means to be brave and courageous. And I think for a lot of people, that's more universal, more relatable, and
No, I got it. And so Islam would just be another dynamic of his character. I mean, of his character, not just his complete.
Yes, and it gives it flavor because like you even in the mob movies you have the church scenes like in The Godfather they go to the church like Islam can be a part of these stories without being like the conflict in the story.
And that's real. That is really America, right? That is really what happens, right? There are so many people who are athletes, politicians, doctors, engineers that they are Muslims, but and they do this on a regular. They do amazing things in the public, and they're Salatul Jummah, on Fridays, right? And it's just a part of the daily or the weekly routine, right?
100%.
So I get that. Totally. I think it's totally cool because and that's one of the problems that we talk about. Sim and Mahin and me. I don't know if we've had that conversation lately, but there's a lot of identity politics among Muslims these days. Whether you want to say right or left or whatever, but the point is that there's a huge focus on, you're a Muslim and you have to feel such ways because you're a Muslim, right? Or you have to believe in X, Y, and Z, or you should be, believing this way or thinking this way or saying things like this way. And I think the more we do that, the more we kind of submit ourselves to their opinion of us, right? Whereas,
100%.
So this is really cool. I think it's awesome. I mean,
awesome.
It's a good idea, and I think that and the reason why I asked you about this was because I follow a lot of like stuff from out of Saudi Arabia, and the reason why on YouTube because their cinema environment and Hollywood was never really there, right? It really only existed in a virtual space, which was YouTube, right? And so, but the content they come out with is amazing. Like it is absolutely amazing. Like the stuff they have out there, the comedy stuff, the dramas, the skits they do. I mean, things that I follow, and I feel like that they're kind of in a weird way. They're setting a trend or an example for how some of these new Muslim content creators can come out with. I'm not saying necessarily it's all Islamic, but they're Muslims doing everyday things, and they kind of incorporate that element of Islam in that Saudi life, right? Because it's always 100%. There. So it's kind of like what you're talking about, but it's really cool. You should check some of the stuff out. It's really cool.
Send me some links, man, or drop me some names. I'm totally interested.
I will, yeah. There's a channel called Khambala, and they do a lot of stuff like that. And there's Al Telfaz. I'll send it to you. But it's really cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think very much Muslim entertainment is in its infancy. Maybe not in the Middle East. Maybe here. I'm speaking Muslim American entertainment. It's still in its infancy. We're still figuring out how to walk. But I think if we can keep in mind one essential truth, I think the people turn to movies and to TV to escape. It's the undeniable reality of entertainment. That's why people go there. And I think in Islamic content, we're so used to like the dawah and like, we have to spread a message, which is cool. It's great, but that's not why people are going to entertainment. So the second your content appears preachy, we're switching the channel. You know what I mean? Yeah. So keeping in mind that people want to entertain, sometimes you need to take out your message and like just look at the characters, look at the story purely from observing these characters, and right through the characters, wallahi, a message will come out that's even more profound than if you were trying to force it, if you just simply follow characters. So
awesome, any better, man.
We couldn't have fantastic way to close out this episode. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Akram. How do people reach out to you?
Instagram, AK Shibly. That's my best way to reach me, best way to follow what I'm doing. It's where I'll post my updates when I start to, inshallah, get into more production with this feature film that I hope to make this year. I'm on Twitter as well, Akram Shibly, YouTube, Akram Shibly. Also check out my production company, True Intent Productions, at trueintentproductions.com.
All right. Thank you so much for my co-hosts, Mort and Mahin, and our guest, Akram. My name is Sim. We'll see you all next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.